Hey Oscar, have you heard the controversy over the new book called The Betrayal of Anne Frank?
No, but I'm always up for some controversy. Please enlighten me.
If the book titled The Betrayal of Anne Frank, a cold case investigation sounds like clickbait, that's because it might be. This book, released in January 2022, is the culmination of a 6-year cold case investigation that examined a nearly 80-year-old question: who betrayed Anne Frank and her family during World War II? Author Rosemary Sullivan posted a new theory that Jewish notary Arnold Vandenberg passed a list of addresses where Jews were hiding to the Nazis to save his own family, and in the process betrayed other Jewish families. Multiple sources have come out saying the book and investigation are inconclusive and full of errors, and there's not enough proof. Some have even called it a borderline conspiracy theory. Publication of the book has been suspended until further notice.
Whoa, sounds like we may be dealing with the case of misinformation.
It definitely could be. The Betrayal of Anne Frank definitely needs to double check their sources.
Speaking of which, I saw there's a new Anne Frank movie on Netflix, and I know she wrote a diary, and she was clearly betrayed, based on the title of the clickbait book. But I'm gonna be honest, I don't know a whole lot about her.
Oh, that's okay, Oscar. Don't feel bad. To be honest, I'm kind of jealous that you're learning about her for the first time. She has such an incredible story. Let's now head to Giovanna to learn more about Anne Frank in this week's edition of Next Gen History.
Hey Next Gen viewers, Giovanna here for an important edition of Next Gen History. Anne Frank was born on June 12, 1929 to a Jewish family in Frankfurt, Germany, and later moved to Amsterdam in the Netherlands. As I mentioned, Anne was Jewish. The Jewish people are an ethnic group originating from the Israelites, and Judaism is the religion of the Jewish people, although not all Jews are religiously observant. Being Jewish is an important part of Anne Frank's story, and to understand her life, we need to investigate a horrific and consequential part of history, the Holocaust. Please note that the content and images in this story are mature, and we recommend viewing this with an adult present. With that, let's take a trip back in time to Germany in the 1930s. The year is 1933. Adolf Hitler, the leader of the Nazi Party, has just been appointed Chancellor of Germany. Hitler and the Nazi Party were a fascist government, and Hitler ruled as a dictator, meaning once he assumed power, Hitler had total control over the government and people to make unilateral decisions and carry out laws, as opposed to a democracy like we have in the United States. Hitler was obsessed with the idea of a superior race. He believed in the Aryan race myth and that the ideal person is tall, has blonde hair, and blue eyes. To him, this race was better than all other races, and all true Germans fit this mold. Jews and other races were inferior to Hitler. And on top of that, he was anti-Semitic, or hostile and prejudiced against Jewish people. Unfortunately, anti-Semitism was deeply rooted in Germany. For centuries, Jews were the scapegoat and blamed for misfortunes throughout history. This most recently included Germany blaming Jews for a devastating loss in World War I. Capitalizing on this anger towards Jews, Hitler rose to power with the support he needed to start carrying out his two main goals: German expansion across Europe and racial purification. In 1935, Hitler legalized the Nuremberg Laws. These laws classified Jews as their own race, stripped them of their German citizenship, and separated them from German life. German Jews were persecuted and stigmatized by non-Jews. From 1933 to 1939, hundreds of thousands of Jews who were able to leave Germany did, but the ones that remained lived in a constant state of fear. This hostility came to a head on November 9, 1938, during Kristallnacht, or the Night of Broken Glass. On this terrible night, Jewish temples called synagogues were burned, Jewish shop windows were broken, thousands of Jews were arrested, and about 100 died. Kristallnacht was just a small preview of what was about to come during World War II. In 1939, Hitler invaded Poland, marking the start of World War II. World War II would eventually be fought between the Axis powers, or Germany, Italy, and Japan, against the Allied powers, Great Britain, the United States, and the Soviet Union. Although the United States didn't officially enter the war until 1941, when Pearl Harbor was bombed, but I digress. Back to 1939. Poland fell immediately under German control, and the Nazis soon forced tens of thousands of Polish Jews from their homes into ghettos. Imagine being taken from your home, having all of your belongings confiscated, and being forced to live in a cramped, dirty place with strangers. Absolutely horrific. Surrounded by walls with barbed wire, the Jewish ghettos were overcrowded, people were hungry, and diseases like typhus spread like wildfire. The Polish ghettos were just the beginning. In 1940, Hitler expanded German reach across Europe and conquered Denmark, Norway, France, Belgium, Luxembourg, and the Netherlands. This is where our friend Anne Frank comes into play. You see, Anne Frank was living in the Netherlands with her family at the time. Once the Nazis were in control, Anne had to wear a yellow Star of David to indicate she was Jewish and was no longer allowed to go to her same school. Jews were separated from society and lost their jobs. In light of this persecution, Otto Frank, Anne's father, tried to immigrate their family to the United States, but their visas were never processed, so the Frank family was stuck in Nazi-occupied Amsterdam. In 1941, Hitler figured out a plan to carry out his dream of racial purification. Jews were Hitler's primary target, but he also imprisoned people that didn't fit his ideal race, including Jehovah's Witnesses, Romanis, criminals, homosexuals, and asocial or mentally impaired individuals. German forces began deporting Jews from the Polish ghettos and then prisoners from the rest of Europe to concentration camps to be killed. They were forced to board trains to these camps, unaware that death awaited them at the end of the tracks. The largest camp was Auschwitz-Birkenau in Poland. At the entrance to Auschwitz, there's a sign that reads, Arbeit macht frei, which means work sets you free. This is what prisoners would see upon entering the camp. But ultimately, it was a lie. Only select, more physically capable prisoners were chosen to work. Most were killed using a poisonous gas called Zyklon B. In response to this mass exodus, the entire Frank family, Anne, Otto, Anne's mother Edith, and Anne's sister Margot, went into hiding in a secret annex above an office. Soon they were joined by another Jewish family, the Van Pels, Herman, Auguste, and 16-year-old Peter, and then followed later by Fritz Pfeffer. Crammed into the secret annex, these 8 Jews hid from the Nazis for about 2 years. The SS, or Nazi armed forces, were constantly outside, taking Jews off the streets and sending them to concentration camps. Anne and the rest of the secret annex had to remain quiet. During that time, Anne wrote nearly every day in a diary. She wrote in great detail about what life was like living in the secret annex, as well as a romantic relationship with Peter, with whom she had her first and only kiss. Here is a passage from Anne's diary that she wrote on July 15, 1944. It's utterly impossible for me to build my life on a foundation of chaos, suffering, and death. I see the world being slowly transformed into a wilderness. I hear the approaching thunder that one day will destroy us too. I feel the suffering of millions, and yet when I look up at the sky, I somehow feel that everything will change for the better, that this cruelty too will end, that peace and tranquility will return once more. In the meantime, I must hold on to my ideals. Perhaps the day will come when I'll be able to realize them. Anne Frank, July 15, 1944. August 1944, approximately 2 weeks after writing that diary entry, the Nazis found Anne and the rest of the Jews hiding in the secret annex. They were taken by the SS and sent by train to Auschwitz. Anne left her diary behind. Upon arrival at the camp, they were separated by men and women, Otto away from the rest of the Frank family. Anne and her sister Margot were eventually transported to Bergen-Belsen, a different concentration camp in Germany, to work. In 1945, a typhoid outbreak swept the camp. Only weeks before the war ended, Margot died, with Anne following the next day. She was 15. In 1945, the Allied forces beat the Axis powers. The Nazis were defeated and Hitler was dead. As the Allied forces set the remaining prisoners free from the camps, they were horrified by what they found. The Jews were left starving, dehumanized, and lost. Most had been separated from their families. Overall, about 6 million Jews died during the Holocaust, including Anne Frank. Otto Frank ultimately survived Auschwitz, but lost his entire family. After the war, Miep Gies, a Dutch woman who had helped the Frank family hide, found Otto and returned Anne's diary to him. Otto Frank went on to publish his daughter's diary in 1947, about 5 years after she'd received the diary for her 13th birthday. After publishing the book, Otto Frank wrote, "How proud Anne would have been if she had lived to see this." The Diary of Anne Frank has been published in over 70 languages and has been made into movies, plays, and TV shows. This incredible diary provides insight into the life under Nazi occupation, and Anne's lively voice serves as a window into the life of a young girl during the Holocaust. Over the years, there have been many investigations to answer the question, who betrayed Anne Frank and her family? The most recent case suggests a Jewish notarist, Arnold Vandenberg, is behind the betrayal. But other experts claim there isn't enough evidence. Although we may never know for sure who betrayed the Frank family, Anne's words will live on forever in her diary.